report this nowadays is that there are three ways we cut the framework, marketing accounting framework of reporting, how we report it. One we call one P&L reporting, two P&L reporting, and three P&L reporting. One P&L is a lot of businesses are just one customer segment, right? In many ways, the Laserway case study that we just walked through is a one P&L case study where they mostly focus on new customers. That's the way they manage leads, and even though there are repeat transactions and whatnot, more or less, they think of their business, the marketing specifically, as essentially acquiring new customers. Okay, the rest of it is taken care of by the customer service department and everything in that. So their whole purpose is to just drive new customer acquisition. So we accounted for them using essentially a one P&L framework. I'm going to walk you through that in 1 second. Where you can think of wedding rings, insurance lead gen, all of these businesses. When we work with them, they're really a one P&L shop, right? Then as some emerging e-commerce businesses like DTC brands and whatnot, they usually will start with new customer acquisition and kind of like add retention marketing. So at that point, they have some churn customers, but they still haven't gotten around to really thinking about reactivating churn customers, and they haven't gotten to that kind of execution. So they really are thinking about the world in of a two P&L framework: acquiring customers, retention marketing. How do I talk to my existing customers in a profitable way and drive profit through that, right? So two P&L framework. And then more mature emerged brands have three very specific executions: one for new customer activation, one for active customers, one for reactivating churn customers, right? And maybe it's its own P&L because they may have a big customer file and a lot of them have churned, and they have to figure out how to optimally go after that customer file and reactivate those customers. So this is a three P&L framework, and we have templates for all three. I'm going to walk you through this because the most simplest framework we have, and Shivank and Alphonse will give you templates for this. We're going to release the template for 3P&L pretty soon. So it's still, we've done a lot of work in 3P&L, but it's not really in a place where we can release it for class learners yet. So I'll walk you through this. You will have a template as part of class to do 2P&L. And probably if you stick around in the community long enough, we'll release these templates as well. Okay. So now let's walk through that in a second. So here is the Laserway case study. Of course, all blinded data, similar to what we walked through last in class. So let's kind of like go through this in a little bit. Okay. So remember how we talked about this. When you first start looking at your brand, you're doing triangulation with just base attribution and incrementality benchmarks or benchmark multipliers, right? You haven't done any tests yet. You haven't built any media mix models yet. It's the very first time you're thinking about looking at the business through an advanced attribution lens. So you're now collecting all the data and saying, here is all my channels. Here is how much I spend on these channels for a period of time. Here is my UTM attribution. I think Vishnu that you were talking about how you built your own UTM attribution. This is their version of it. They built their own UTM attribution. And then the platform attribution. What is AdWords is reporting here? What is Facebook's reporting here? What is Snap's reporting here, and so on and so forth? It's kind of like their platform reporting. Okay, this kind of go through this. Then what we do before, let's imagine you haven't done any MMMs yet, right? So let's hide this for a second, right? What we do is we apply what we call benchmark multipliers. Okay, I think we talked about how we're going to issue benchmark multipliers to the class. You guys can all use this yourself. As just part of a sensitivity analysis. Remember, we talked about sensitivity analysis. We go through sensitivity analysis for each line item here, identify what a course estimate of contribution would be. Okay, this is the course estimate here based on benchmarks. And then now let's hide this as well, right? We haven't done any MMMs yet, right? So now we're looking at what is the ROAS on a UTM basis, ROAS on a platform basis, and what is the incrementality adjusted? What is the multiplier adjusted numbers look like, right? This is the place where we start our analysis typically, okay? This is the one P&L framework as we call it. There's just simply just one P&L here, okay? Then we kind of make some mock decisions and say, okay, if I believe these numbers, where am I finding the most obvious decisions I would make? Imagine, as we talked about in yesterday's class, he's managing to a 3 ROAS here. So all of this, he's trying to manage to overall 3 ROAS. And then in this particular time period we looked at, there's 187,000 leads, about $43 million in revenue. So if you look at the total But according to UTM, about 46% of the business is media driven. It's very close to what platforms also reporting, even though the numbers among them are quite different. The overall numbers are still landing in a very similar place, which is kind of odd. Okay, but when you look at incrementality, it's saying it's slightly lower. The benchmark applied numbers are slightly lower, but still in the ballpark. Okay, so if you look at the it's a 6.7 MER, but the actual incremental MER is only 3.1, right? It's roughly approximating the ROAS that they have, right? It's kind of how the portfolio was built up. Now we make some mock decisions. We say, okay, which of these channels would I cut budgets, hold budgets? How sensitive are these decisions? Which ones do I feel like, oh my God, this one thing says I should hold my budgets. One thing says I should cut my budgets, right? And incrementality is also saying hold your budgets. So wait a second. If this seems like a pretty sensitive decision either way, even if I say hold, I could be losing money here. So it's a highly sort of the decision depends quite on how you measure it. So it is a highly sensitive decision here. Whereas let's take one that is here, for example, search
Madan, can you
non-brand.
unpack that? Unpack that. Why
Right.
is decision sensitivity high?
Hold on. Let me make the alternate case here. Take the alternate case. Let's say he's managing to 3 ROAS here. No matter what you look at, it's well below 3 here. Bing's non-brand search is 1.7 on UTM, 1 on platform, 1.4 on this benchmark. So if I say cut spend here, it's kind of a low decision sensitivity because all of them are saying it's well below 3. Okay, so I could actually probably start looking at removing some budgets here, but it's a fairly small amount of spend, so it kind of doesn't matter. So I'm doing it as an academic exercise here, right? So what we typically go through is this process to figure out which of these channels, what decisions I'm making, how sensitive are they, okay? Then what we do is we go and build an MMM, right? So now I'm going to show you the MMM estimates here. So we went through MMM and we built MMM. Now what the MMM does, it kind of dials in these estimates as opposed to just looking at last click data. You're now able to look at last click along with a causal estimate, okay? Now, as I said, incrementality testing is the highest form of causal measurement you can do. But you can't be, it takes a while to do the testing and run the test and get results. But MMMs are much faster in today's sort of ecosystem. You can run MMMs within about 2 weeks, for example, and get some estimates back, right? So within 2 weeks, you can get to a place where you can look at your portfolio from a causal lens. When you do that, now you end up in the situation where you say, oh, wait a second. Actually, MMMs are reporting even lower ROAS than UTM. So I would actually cut spend here, but it's a pretty sensitive decision because it's my highest spending, but 50% of my budgets are here. So it could actually have a significant impact on my business. I should probably test this one. So this is definitely something I should test, okay? Similarly, if you take another one here, let's take, for example, the opposite, CTV. Look at CTV. Now, there is almost no signal UTM basis, right? I think Vishnu, you were talking about building UTMs. This is one of the biggest challenges when you're doing your own first-party attribution. Not all the channels will have the entropy or the information to do last-click attribution on a first-party basis. Specifically, as you go further in upper funnel and mid funnel channels, you will lose signal. And of course, these are CTV channels. It's not even the same device. So your ability to match an impression to a conversion is obviously super challenged, right? So UTM will not catch anything here. Even though the platform attribution will catch something. You'll see that Roku, as an example, has good first-party device graphs. So they're able to pick up a reasonable amount of first-party on their first-party for them, platform attribution. So ROAS looks really strong here, almost like non-existent here, right? So you couldn't make any decision here, right? But when you run the MMMs, you come back and say, wow, it's really strong. This is amazing. So it's kind of picking up a lot of juice here, a lot of signal here. So this could be very valuable. We should double down on these channels. But the decision sensitivity is very high because one paradigm says there is no conversion. One paradigm says a lot of conversions. There is a fair amount of variability in the decision depending on what you believe in. So it is very high decision. So you absolutely should test this. Okay. Here, if you look at it, a lot of these channels are well below 2. And you would, depending on which channel you're looking at, some of them are high, some of them are low. Okay. So this is where you start. Okay. This is where you start. Then what we do is you kind of turn this into, say, okay, I should probably test. These are all my decisions I would make. We kind of walked through that yesterday. We make mock decisions here. Okay, I'm going to cut spend here by 30%. I believe I'll have this kind of diminishing return. If I add this kind of diminishing return, I'll probably end up with a higher ROAS. And because we're cutting spend, the ROAS will improve, right? So I think it should move up, and therefore I'll end up in a specific place. So go through all these mock decisions that show you a certain amount of lift. So then you go back and you actually do those tests, and you kind of confirm what not the benchmarks anymore. These are not benchmarks anymore. These are actual multipliers from a test, right? Based on these multipliers, we end up getting a ROAS that is tested ROAS, which we have a lot more confidence in. Okay, now we can make these decisions with more confidence. And like we looked at yesterday, some of these decisions got confirmed, some of these decisions got negated. Like, for example, the search decision to cut search budgets and improve the ROAS worked out, but Facebook did not really work out, came back lower, right? Even though Roku and Trade Desk Yelp estimates came back lower, it's still well above 3. So you'll still validate the decision we're making. Same thing with Pandora, not so much with Snap. It was right on the line, so we're just probably holding spend here, right? And then we make all these decisions in a tested, risk mitigated basis because we're able to actually identify what the real ROAS is through a test. Okay. Now, if you kind of look at how Paul was describing his use case, he is removing risk at every level, right? First, he just had UTM and platform, so you could only invest in the lower funnel channels. You can see that most of his budgets are concentrated on Facebook and sorry, not Facebook, on Google and somewhat social. And he's trying out a bunch of other channels, but he doesn't have the signal on a UTM basis to really scale these channels. He's like, I'm trying them, but I'm not finding signal. So he's looking for advanced attribution to give him the signal. We did MMMs and we gave him some signal and said, hey, you could have some real signal here. Ran the test, confirmed that. And then he did another test. Now he split the country half and half. He's getting even more strength on the signal before going national with it, right? So that's kind of how marketers kind of take risk out by testing and like ladder up to a new portfolio media mix by learning about what's working and finding data that anchors, that actually gives them more signal or confidence about the decision. Similar to how Gail was talking about, right? So Gail has a very similar point as to how she would approach these testing and all the data to kind of gain confidence in a step-by-step basis. Okay. All right. That's what this is about. I'm going to go through this section here, but before that, any questions? So now we ran the tests. We confirmed some decisions. We negated some decisions. And then you come to the final, this part of the thing where I say, I then decide which I believe in. So I ran a bunch of tests. I really believe in the search piece now because I ran a test here. Whereas some others, I didn't do any tests. The best estimate I have is MMM. So I can pick and choose which advanced attribution method I believe in. With to some reason, there is some level of human judgment that goes into it, right? You can't be super frivolous about it. But when you run a test, you believe that result more than MMM. But when you haven't done a test and all you have is UTM or platform, you probably believe the MMM to a certain extent, right? So you can kind of pick the advanced attribution method that makes the most sense, and then pick the anchor that you want to use. You want to see which, for example, you can say that here, UTM is pretty strong. Okay, you always used UTM data for search. Absolutely, you can use last click data from UTM as your anchor. But as for Roku, look at this, for example. Makes no sense for you to use UTM parameters. You probably have to use platform attribution because there's a lot more signal there in the first part, in the platform attribution, than in the UTM attribution. So it goes back to the point that Vishnu was making, that it's pretty challenging to make UTM work across all channels and also across brands, right? So how do you do this? You actually pick and choose. You pick and choose which channels you want to use platform attribution as the anchor, which channels you want to use UTM attribution as the anchor, and then roll it all up together into essentially a report card here. Okay. Now, I was playing around today morning and I broke this channel dashboard, but I will show you what it should look like. If I didn't break it, it should look like this. Okay. Basically, is all your channels. You just spend. This is the base attribution. Again, heterogeneous. Maybe for some channels you're using platform, some channels you're using using UTM. So you can pick whatever channels that you care about. Advanced attribution, same thing. Some channels you're using incrementality testing, some channels you're using MMM. Again, very heterogeneous. You can pick it. Now this becomes the way you report your channels. Okay. The beautiful thing about this is that now you can calculate a multiplier. This multiplier is kind of a very straightforward. Advanced attribution divided by base attribution gives you a multiplier. So if you had a target, in this particular case, CPA, you can now translate the CPA into a platform target. What should I bid in search? What should I bid in Facebook? Angela, I'm going to just mute you for a second here. Okay. What should I bid in these different platforms? It becomes like a simple, like a lookup table here. You can come here, figure out how to translate the advanced attribution CPA reads you're getting. If you believe this, what should I be bidding in the platforms? Becomes kind of a very simple lookup here. Okay. So this is kind of how you translate advanced attribution to essentially campaign optimizations. Now, Ali is going to, in the next section right after this, she's going to take much further. She's going to walk you through how to do this for search, how to do this for Facebook, how to do this for CTV, right? She's going to break it up in a much more hands-on playbook. But this is kind of the theory of how you translate advanced attribution and base attribution and bring them together in one reporting framework, allows you to bridge the two worlds you all live in, okay? Now, this is what finance wants to look at. This is what marketing is used to looking at, right? As a marketer, you're living in this world. What is my CPA? What's my ROAS? What's my last click attribution? 7-day click, 1-day view, UTM. You live here, right? You've reconciled all of that and said, some channels, I believe I want to use 7-day click for Facebook, and that's it. For TikTok, I want to use 1-day click. For search, I'm using a 30-day conversion window. For CTV, I'm using Roku's own attribution. Okay, great, no problem. You can use all of whatever it makes the most sense to you. You can use advanced attribution methods that have nothing to do with how last click works to report what the causal impact is, and use the multiplier framework to translate between the two. Now, finance will look at this. Marketing will look at this, and you can all live happily ever after, hold hands, sing kumbaya, and everybody is super happy, right? So this is kind of how it kind of bridge those two worlds. Okay, this is called the one P&L framework, where it's just one P&L.